The stars bent and twisted as 12,000 warships tore through the fabric of space. The Empire had arrived at the edge of Sol system, and Supreme Commander stood at the center of his flagship's bridge with his four arms clasped behind his back. His skin reflected the blue light of the holographic displays around him. He had done this 17 times before. 17 star systems. 17 species that had begged for mercy. 17 victories that had expanded the Empire's reach across the galaxy. This would be his 18th. "Show me the planet," commanded. His voice was deep and carried the clicking sounds that all made when they spoke. The main display flickered to life, showing a blue and green world spinning slowly in the darkness. Earth. The scouts had been watching it for decades, intercepting the strange signals that leaked from its surface. Radio waves, television broadcasts, the primitive communications of a species that had not yet learned to hide its presence from the hunters of the void. Fleet Master stepped forward and bowed his head. "Commander, our analysis is complete. The humans possess approximately 400 orbital defense platforms. Their weapons appear to be based on nuclear fission technology. Their fastest ships can barely reach the outer planets of their own system." The bridge crew made clicking sounds with their mouths. It was laughter. The idea of nuclear weapons threatening a warship was amusing to them. Their shields could absorb the energy of a small star. What could atom splitting do against such power? Allowed himself to join in the amusement. And their population. 8 billion, Commander, a good harvest. 8 billion workers for the mines. 8 billion bodies to fuel the Empire's expansion. Had seen species twice as numerous fall within days. The humans would be no different. Far below, on the surface of the blue planet, Admiral stood in the command center of the United Earth Defense Council. She was 32 years old, with sharp eyes and black hair pulled back tightly. She had trained her entire life for this moment. When she was 12, humanity had discovered the ruins on Mars. Ancient cities turned to glass, bones scattered across red sand, and a warning carved in stone by dying hands in a language it took 20 years to translate. "They are coming. Hide or die." Humanity had chosen a third option. "The fleet has entered the system," reported Captain from her station. She was young, barely 25, but her voice was steady. 12,000 vessels, exact match to our projections." Nodded slowly. "Begin protocol, stage 1. Across the planet, in bunkers hidden beneath mountains and oceans, scientists and soldiers started their work. They moved with calm purpose. There was no panic. Panic was for those who had not prepared. Secretary General entered the command center. He was 70 years old, with white hair and a gentle face that had convinced the nations of Earth to set aside their differences. For the first time in human history, the entire species had united under a single purpose: survival. "They are broadcasting," announced. The main screen changed to show. His alien face filled the display, an angular with eyes like black stones. When he spoke, his words were translated instantly into every human language. "Creatures of Earth, your planet now belongs to the Empire. Surrender your resources and your population will be processed humanely. Resist, and we will demonstrate why no species has ever survived our arrival. You have one rotation of your planet to comply." The transmission ended. "Looked at, shall I respond?" She gestured toward the communication console. "Please." The Secretary General straightened his simple suit and faced the camera. His voice was calm when he spoke, as if he were discussing the weather rather than the fate of humanity. "We decline your offer. Please leave our system." In orbit, the bridge erupted in clicking laughter. Shook his head slowly, amused by the boldness of prey that did not understand it was already dead. "They have spirit," observed. "It will make the conquest more entertaining." "It will make no difference," replied. "Begin standard subjugation protocol, destroy their orbital defenses, then we land the troops." Thousands of kilometers away, in a bunker carved into the mountains of Provence, Doctor watched the alien fleet on her screens. She was 45 years old, a physicist who had spent 2 decades working on technology that should not exist. The crashed vessel on the moon had given humanity many gifts: faster-than-light communication, quantum computing, and weapons that the galaxy had never imagined. Her assistant stood beside her, monitoring the data streams. "They are powering weapons," he said. "Good," typed commands into her console. "Let them shoot at the decoys first. We need them confident." "The people are afraid," said quietly. "The news feeds are showing panic in the cities." Smiled. "The cities are empty, everyone is underground. The panic they see is actors and holograms. We have been preparing for 40 years. Nothing is what it appears to be." Above the Earth, the fleet opened fire. Brilliant streams of plasma crossed the darkness, striking the orbital platforms one by one. They exploded in bursts of light that lit up the night sky across 3 continents. People who did not know about Project looked up in terror, believing humanity's defenses were being destroyed. They were wrong. The platforms were empty shells, decoys designed to absorb exactly this kind of attack. Not a single human life was lost. Not a single real weapon was damaged. They were destroying ghosts while the true defenses waited in silence. "Watch the destruction with satisfaction." Status report. "All orbital platforms eliminated, Commander. No resistance encountered." Hesitated. "That is unusual. Most species attempt to return fire." "They know it would be pointless." Dismissed the concern. "Scan for their population centers. Prepare the landing forces." The scanners swept across Earth's surface. They found cities, infrastructure, all the signs of a technological civilization. What they could not detect was the network of tunnels that stretched beneath every continent. What they could not see was the quantum-shielded facilities where 8 billion humans waited in silence. What they could not know was that every reading they received was carefully designed to show them exactly what they expected to see. General commanded the underground resistance from a facility 2 kilometers beneath Seoul. He was 50 years old, a former Special Forces commander who had spent the last decade training civilians to become soldiers. Not traditional soldiers, but something new, something the galaxy had never faced. "Deployment is ready," reported Lieutenant. She was the team's psychological warfare specialist, trained to understand how alien minds worked. "We are waiting for your order." Shook his head. "Not yet. Let them land their troops first. Let them believe they are winning. The trap only works if they step fully inside it." On the flagship, received the scanning results and found them satisfactory. The humans had concentrated in predictable patterns. Their military installations were visible and vulnerable. Their population centers were exactly where primitive species always built them: near water, near resources, near the places where they had first learned to walk upright. "This will be quick," he announced to his crew. 3 days, perhaps 4, then we move to the next system." He did not notice the microscopic particles drifting past his ship's hull. He did not feel the nanomachines settling into the bioorganic material that made up vessels. He did not know that, with every passing second, humanity's true weapons were spreading through his fleet like a silent disease. Admiral watched the alien ships from her command center. She had spent 20 years waiting for this moment. 20 years of sacrifice, of secrecy, of building weapons in hidden factories while the world pretended to be helpless. "They are laughing at us," said softly. His expression did not change. "Let them laugh. They will learn soon enough that some prey has teeth." The first day of the invasion ended with the believing they had won. They had destroyed Earth's visible defenses. They had mapped the population centers. They had prepared their landing forces. Everything had gone exactly as it always did. They had no idea they were already dead. They attacked at dawn. They chose the time carefully, knowing that primitive species often attached meaning to the rising of their star. It was a psychological tactic they had used many times before: strike when the prey awakens. Let them see their world burning in the morning light. Plasma fire rained down from orbit. The bolts of superheated energy struck the surface with the force of nuclear explosions, vaporizing everything they touched. From space, the planet's dark side lit up with hundreds of impacts. Cities burned. Forests turned to ash. Oceans boiled where the weapons found their marks. Watched the destruction from his command throne. Showed the blue planet scarring beneath his fleet's assault. 17 times he had seen this. 17 species had watched their worlds burn just like this before they surrendered or died. Reports, he commanded. Studied the data streams with growing confusion. Commander, something is wrong. Explain. Our targeting systems locked onto population centers based on heat signatures, electromagnetic activity, and infrastructure density. The fleet master's voice carried uncertainty. We have struck over 200 locations, but our sensors show no biological casualties. Leaned forward. That is impossible. I am showing you the data, Commander. The cities we destroyed were empty. No life signs before impact. No death signatures after. Turned to face his superior. They knew where we would strike. On Earth's surface, the bombardment continued for 6 hours. They poured enough energy into the planet to sterilize a dozen worlds. They targeted every major city, every military installation, every center of power that their scans had identified. When the assault finally ended, they expected to see a broken civilization ready to surrender. Instead, they saw something impossible. The planet still hung in space, battered but intact. The cities they had destroyed had been empty shells, elaborate constructions of holographic projectors and abandoned buildings. The military bases had contained nothing but old equipment and automated systems. Every target they had identified was a decoy, designed to absorb exactly this kind of attack. In her bunker beneath Province, Doctor checked her readings and allowed herself a small smile. The quantum field generators were performing beyond expectations. The real cities, the real people, the real infrastructure, all of it was hidden beneath kilometers of rock and shielding that the sensors could not penetrate. Phase 1 complete, she reported through the secure channel. They wasted most of their ammunition on ghosts. Admiral received the message in the command center. Around her, the officers of the United Earth Defense Council worked in focused silence. They had practiced this moment countless times. Every contingency had been planned. Every variable had been considered. Estimated enemy ammunition status, she asked. Approximately 30% of their primary weapons reserves remain, Captain replied. They fired everything they had at the decoys. General's voice came through the speakers. They have achieved 94% saturation across the enemy fleet. Every ship is infected. They have no idea. They were humanity's secret weapon. Microscopic machines, too small to detect with any known scanning technology, designed to infiltrate and disable enemy vessels from the inside. They had been released in the upper atmosphere during the first hour of the invasion, drifting up on thermal currents until they reached the orbiting fleet. Now they clung to every surface of every ship, waiting for the activation signal. In orbit, struggled to understand what had happened. His conquest had never gone wrong before. Species fell before the like grass before a fire. They did not hide. They did not prepare. They did not leave their cities empty while his fleet exhausted itself against illusions. Find them, he ordered. Scan deeper, they must be somewhere. Sub-Commander worked the sensors with growing frustration. Commander, the planet's magnetic field is interfering with our deep scans. We cannot see beneath the surface. Then land the ground forces, search every structure, dig into every cave. Stood from his throne, his 4 arms spreading wide. I do not care if we have to tear this planet apart stone by stone. Find the humans. The landing pods launched within the hour. 300,000 warriors descended through the atmosphere, their armored shells burning bright as meteors. They landed in the ruins of cities, in the ashes of forests, in the craters left by orbital bombardment. They expected to find survivors cowering in the wreckage. They found nothing. Lieutenant monitored the enemy movements from her station deep underground. She had studied them for years, learning their language, their psychology, their patterns of conquest. She knew how they thought, she knew what they expected, and she knew exactly how to use those expectations against them. "They are searching the surface ruins," she reported. "Ground teams have spread across all continents." "Let them search," replied. "They will find only what we want them to find." What they found was evidence of evacuation, abandoned vehicles, discarded belongings, signs that billions of people had simply vanished. Their commanders reported back with confusion and frustration. The prey had escaped somehow. The hunt would take longer than expected. Received these reports with growing anger. How does a species of 8 billion simply disappear? Had no answer. In 300 cycles of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. Species ran, but they could always be found. Species hid, but they always left traces. The humans had done something impossible. They had made themselves invisible to the greatest hunters in the galaxy. Deep beneath the surface, humanity waited. The underground network stretched across every continent, connecting bunkers and shelters and hidden cities through tunnels that had taken 4 decades to build. 8 billion people lived in this shadow world, preparing for the moment when they would emerge. In a shelter beneath, a woman named held her weapon and waited. She was 43 years old, a former accountant who had never imagined she would become a soldier. But when the aliens came, every human had been called to serve. She had trained for 2 years, learning to use technology that still seemed like magic to her. The rifle in her hands could create localized gravity wells, crushing anything caught in their field. It was terrifying. It was necessary. Her daughter, 18 years old, stood beside her with the same determined expression. "When do we fight?" "When they come underground," replied. "When they find us, then we show them what humans are capable of." Back in orbit, the fleet maintained its position. The ships hummed with power, their bioorganic hulls pulsing with life. The crews went about their duties, unaware that billions of microscopic machines had already infiltrated every system. They waited in the walls, in the air recyclers, in the weapon arrays. They waited for the signal that would end the invasion before it truly began. Admiral reviewed the situation from her command center. Phase 1 had succeeded beyond expectations. The enemy had wasted their ammunition. Their ground forces were scattered across the surface, searching for people who were not there. Their fleet was infected with. Everything was proceeding according to plan. "How long until they realize something is wrong?" asked. "It does not matter," replied. "By the time they understand what is happening, it will be too late." She thought about the ruins on Mars, the bones scattered across red sand, the warning carved in stone by dying hands. They had been unprepared. They had tried to fight with courage alone. They had failed. Humanity would not make the same mistake. "Prepare Phase 2, ordered. "When I give the signal, I want every in that fleet to activate simultaneously." "Understood, Admiral." The second day of the invasion ended with them more confused than before. Their bombardment had achieved nothing. Their ground forces had found nothing. Their scans showed nothing. They were fighting an enemy that seemed to exist only in shadows and smoke. In his command throne, stared at the blue planet below. For the first time in his long career of conquest, he felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not yet, but a creeping uncertainty that whispered warnings in the back of his mind. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. He pushed the feeling aside. They had never been defeated. They never would be. Whatever tricks the humans were playing would eventually fail. All prey made mistakes. All prey eventually fell. He could not know that far below, in bunkers hidden beneath mountains and oceans. 8 billion humans were counting down the hours until his fleet would die. 3 days into the invasion, Supreme Commander called a war council. His officers gathered in the flagship's central chamber, their faces marked with confusion and frustration. Nothing was working the way it should. Nothing made sense. "We have searched every structure on the surface," reported. "We have scanned every cave, every tunnel, every underground formation our sensors can reach. The humans have vanished completely." 8 billion creatures do not vanish, growled. "They are hiding, find them." "Commander, with respect, our sensors are the most advanced in the known galaxy. If the humans were anywhere within our scanning range, we would have found them." Hesitated before continuing. "There is another possibility." "Speak." "They may have technology that can block our scans. Technology we have not encountered before." The chamber fell silent. The idea was disturbing. They had conquered 17 star systems because they possessed the most advanced technology in this region of space. The thought that a primitive species might have something they did not was almost impossible to accept. "Impossible," declared Subcommander. "Our scouts observed this species for decades. They were barely capable of leaving their own planet. They communicated with simple electromagnetic waves. Their weapons were based on chemical explosions and splitting atoms." "Then explain what is happening," said coldly. No one could. Far below, in her underground command center, Admiral prepared the next phase of the operation. The time had come to reveal that humanity was not helpless prey. The time had come to show the something that would shake their confidence to its core. "Open a channel to the enemy flagship," she ordered. Captain looked up with surprise. "Admiral, are you sure? If we transmit, they will know our general location." "That is the point," straightened her uniform. "They need to understand what they are dealing with. Fear will make them desperate. Desperate enemies make mistakes." The transmission went out, cutting through every communication channel simultaneously. On the flagship, saw a human face appear on his. It was Lieutenant, her expression calm and professional. "Supreme Commander," she said in perfect. The bridge crew froze. Their language was complex, with sounds that most species could not produce. It took children years to learn it properly. Yet this human spoke it as if she had been born to it. "You speak our tongue," said slowly. "How is this possible?" Smiled. "We have been studying your kind for 40 years, Commander. Since we found the vessel that crashed on our fourth planet's moon, your scout ship, Designation 7. It contained many interesting things. Navigation data, historical records, cultural archives." She paused. "And a complete linguistic database." Felt his blood run cold. 7 had been lost 4 decades ago. The crew was presumed dead, the ship assumed destroyed, if the humans had recovered it. "The navigation data," he whispered. "Yes, we know the location of Prime. We know the coordinates of every system you have conquered. We know about the 17 species you exterminated." Smile faded. "Including the who tried to warn us about you before they died." Leaned close to. "Commander, if they have our navigation data, they could share it with the consortium. Our enemies would know where to find they could." Silence, forced himself to remain calm. The humans were trying to frighten him. It was a tactic, nothing more. "What do you want?" "Leave," replied simply. "Take your fleet and never return to Sol system. We will keep your secrets. Your enemies will never learn what we know. This can end peacefully." "And if we refuse?" "Then we will demonstrate why your 17 conquests mean nothing to us." Cut the transmission and turned to his officers. "Full assault, every weapon, every ship, burn that planet to ash." The order spread through the fleet in seconds. 12,000 warships opened fire simultaneously, pouring energy into Earth's atmosphere with enough force to crack the crust of a smaller world. The sky lit up with plasma and fire. The planet should have died in that moment. But it did not. In her bunker, Doctor watched her displays with satisfaction. The quantum field generators, hidden at strategic points around the globe, activated in perfect synchronization. Earth's magnetic field amplified 1,000-fold, becoming a shield that deflected the plasma streams away from the surface and back into space. Field holding at 112% capacity, reported. They cannot touch us. On the flagship, watched in disbelief as his weapons achieved nothing. The bombardment that should have sterilized the planet was being turned aside as if by an invisible hand. It was impossible. It violated every principle of physics they understood. "What is happening?" he demanded. "The planet's magnetic field," stammered. "It has somehow increased in strength by a factor of. Commander, these readings make no sense. A natural magnetic field cannot do this." "It is not natural." His voice was quiet, filled with the first true fear he had felt in centuries of warfare. "They have technology we do not understand. They have weapons we cannot see. They have been preparing for us." The bombardment continued for 3 hours. The fleet exhausted nearly all of its remaining ammunition and achieved nothing. The blue planet hung in space, unmarked and unharmed, its impossible shield deflecting everything they threw at it. In the command center, Admiral watched the enemy fleet grow quiet. They had used 70% of their weapons on the decoys. They had used most of the remainder on the magnetic shield. Now they were nearly defenseless, and they did not even know it. "Phase 2 complete," she announced. "Prepare Phase 3. General acknowledged from his position beneath Seoul. "Ground defense forces are ready. All civilian units have received their weapons and training updates. When the enemy lands, they will be waiting." The next morning made his decision. If orbital bombardment could not break Earth, he would send his entire ground force to conquer it personally. 3 million warriors, the largest invasion force in the Empire's history, would descend to the surface and find the hidden humans. "We will search every centimeter of that planet," he declared. "We will dig through solid rock if we must. They cannot hide forever." His officers nodded in agreement, but their confidence had been shaken. Something about this invasion was deeply wrong. The humans should have been easy prey. Instead, they were proving to be something else entirely. In the shelters below, humanity prepared to reveal its final secret. The underground tunnels had connected not just for protection, but for coordination. 8 billion people had been trained in the use of weapons that should not exist. Farmers and teachers and office workers had become soldiers. Children had grown up learning to fight an enemy from the stars. Checked her gravitational pulse rifle one final time. Beside her, did the same. Around them, thousands of other civilians waited in the tunnels that led to the surface. They were not professional soldiers. They were ordinary people who had been given extraordinary tools. "Are you afraid?" asked. Considered the question. "Yes, but I am also ready." The invasion had reached its turning point. They were about to commit their ground forces, believing they were hunting helpless prey. They had no idea that they were walking into the largest ambush in galactic history. Far above gave the order. 3 million warriors launched from the fleet, their drop pods burning through the atmosphere like falling stars. They believed they were about to claim another world for the Empire. They were wrong. The humans were waiting, and they had teeth that the galaxy had never seen. The drop pods fell like burning rain across every continent. 3 million warriors, the largest invasion force the Empire had ever assembled, struck the surface of Earth in a coordinated assault. They expected to find a broken world, populated by terrified primitives waiting to be conquered. They found something very different. The first squad to land touched down in what had once been Seoul. The city was ruins now, shattered by orbital bombardment 3 days earlier. Smoke still rose from the craters. Nothing moved. Squad leader scanned the area with his weapon raised, searching for any sign of the hidden humans. "Empty," one of his soldiers reported. like everywhere else. Clicked his mouth in frustration. They are here somewhere, spread out and search the underground structures. They moved toward a collapsed building, looking for an entrance to the tunnel systems they knew must exist beneath the city. They were so focused on what lay below that they did not notice the woman standing in the shadows of a ruined wall. Raised her rifle, her hands were steady, her heart was calm. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times during her training. Now it was real. "Welcome to Earth," she said. She pulled the trigger. The gravitational pulse rifle created a localized gravity well, a sphere of force so intense that it compressed anything caught inside it. The squad simply crumpled, their bodies crushed into balls no larger than a fist. It happened in less than a second. 8 warriors who had conquered worlds died without understanding what had killed them. Similar scenes played out across the planet. In the forests of Provence, a group of teachers ambushed a patrol with plasma weapons reverse-engineered from alien technology. In the mountains of Island, farmers used quantum disruptors to disable enemy armor before finishing them with simple rifles. In the tunnels beneath, and her unit trapped an entire company of invaders and eliminated them with weapons that bent the laws of physics. They had expected to hunt frightened civilians. Instead, they found themselves fighting an army of 8 billion, every single member armed with technology that exceeded their own. General coordinated the defense from his command center beneath Seoul. Reports poured in from every continent, every nation, every hidden bunker. The enemy was dying in numbers that should have been impossible. "Casualties?" he asked. Captain checked her displays. Enemy losses at approximately 200,000 in the first hour. Friendly losses are minimal. Most of our people never even needed to fire. The aliens are walking into ambushes faster than we can set them up. Nodded slowly. This was what 40 years of preparation had achieved. Every human adult had been trained. Every human adult had been armed. They were facing an entire species that had transformed itself into a weapon. In orbit, watched the casualty reports with growing horror. His invasion force was being slaughtered, not in battle against a professional military, but by ordinary citizens who appeared from nowhere, struck with impossible weapons, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Where did they get these weapons?" No one could answer him. Sub-Commander spoke quietly, his voice filled with the realization of what they faced. "Commander, the particles, the ones we dismissed as atmospheric debris when we first arrived, they are in our ships." "What do you mean?" "I have been running deep scans of our own hull. There are microscopic machines embedded in the bioorganic material, billions of them. They have been there since the first day." Turned to face. "We are infected with something. I do not know what it does, but it is everywhere." As if in response to his words, Admiral's face appeared on every screen in the fleet. She spoke calmly, as if discussing something of minor importance. "You are wondering how we knew you were coming," she said. "You are wondering how we built weapons that exceed your own. You are wondering why nothing has gone the way you expected." Stared at the human woman on his. He had conquered 17 species. He had destroyed civilizations that were old when his own people were still learning to make fire. He had never felt fear. He felt it now. "The answer is simple," continued. "We have been preparing for you for 40 years, since before your empire knew we existed, since we found what remained of the species you exterminated in this sector before turning your attention to us. They tried to warn us. They tried to help us. They failed to save themselves, but they gave us everything we needed to save ourselves." She paused and her expression hardened. "Your vessels are now under our control. The nanomachines that have infected your fleet will activate in exactly 10 seconds. When they do, your ships will go dark. Life support, weapons, engines, communications, everything will fail. Your fleet will become a collection of tombs drifting in the void." lunged toward the communications console. All ships, emergency protocols, purge the. He never finished the sentence. The activated. Across 12,000 warships, chaos erupted. Lights flickered and died. Air recyclers stopped breathing. Weapon arrays powered down. Engine cores went cold. In seconds, the greatest armada the Empire had ever assembled became nothing more than metal coffins floating in the darkness of space. On the flagship, emergency lighting bathed the bridge in dim red. Stumbled in the sudden shift, grabbing a console for support. Around him, his crew shouted in panic as their displays went blank and their systems failed. "What is happening?" screamed. His voice continued through speakers that should not have been working. "Your warriors on the surface are surrounded by 8 billion armed humans. Your ships are dead. Your ammunition is exhausted. Your secrets are in our hands." The screen showed Earth below, the blue planet that should have been easy prey. It hung in space, beautiful and terrible, the world that had just defeated the greatest military power in the known galaxy. "You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally," said. "After that, we will demonstrate to the entire galaxy what happens to those who threaten Earth." In the tunnels beneath the surface, humanity listened to the broadcast with grim satisfaction. They had done the impossible. They had defeated an empire that had never known defeat, and they had done it not through luck, but through 40 years of preparation, sacrifice, and determination. Lowered her weapon as the warriors around her threw down their arms and raised their hands in surrender. They looked confused, frightened, unable to understand how their conquest had become a catastrophe. "It is over," she said quietly. Her daughter stood beside her, looking at the defeated aliens with an expression that held no hatred, only resolve. "No," she replied, "it is just beginning." Above the Earth, the fleet drifted in silence. The warriors on the surface surrendered by the hundreds of thousands, unable to fight an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. In his darkened command throne, stared at the planet that had destroyed everything he believed. He had laughed at Earth's defenses. He was not laughing now. Admiral watched the enemy fleet on her displays. They had performed perfectly. Not a single ship remained operational. Not a single weapon could fire. Not a single warrior could escape. "Begin recovery operations," she ordered. "I want prisoners treated humanely, medical attention for the wounded, food and water for everyone." She paused. "We are not them. We will not become them." The message spread through the underground network. Across the planet, humans emerged from their hiding places to accept the surrender of an alien army that had never imagined defeat was possible. The 4th day of the invasion ended with humanity victorious. But the galaxy had not yet heard what Earth had to say. Supreme Commander refused to surrender. It was not courage that drove him. It was simply that his mind could not accept what had happened. In 300 cycles of conquest that had never been defeated, the concept did not exist in their language. Their culture had no word for it, no framework for understanding it. So he sat in his darkened command throne, surrounded by dead systems and terrified crew members, and he refused to believe that everything had ended. "Restore power," he ordered for the 100th time. "Find a way to restore power." Approached him carefully. "Commander, the machines in our hull are blocking every repair attempt. They are inside everything. We cannot remove them without tearing the ship apart." "Then tear it apart." "Commander, if we do that, we will all die. There is no atmosphere outside. Our suits are also infected." His voice was gentle, almost pitying. "It is over. We must surrender." Turned on him with fury in his black eyes. "The do not surrender. We have never surrendered. We will find a way. We always find a way." "Not this time." The words came from Sub-Commander. He had been working at a communication console in the corner, trying to restore some function to the damaged systems. Now he stood straight, his expression hollow. I have managed to establish a minimal connection to our long-range transmitter. It will only work once. After that, the machines will shut it down permanently. He looked at. We can send one message to Prime, one message to warn them. Was silent for a long moment. Then he rose from his throne and walked to the console. If he could not defeat the humans, he could at least ensure that his people knew what had happened here. He could warn them never to return to this system. He could save others from making the same mistake. He began to speak, and his words were recorded for transmission across the stars. This is Supreme Commander of the 3rd Expansion Fleet. We are defeated. He paused, struggling to continue. The words felt like poison on his tongue. The humans possess technology beyond our comprehension. They have captured our navigation data. They have weapons that operate on principles we cannot understand. They are not primitives. They were never primitives. His voice grew quiet. They were waiting for us. He described everything that had happened. The empty cities, the impossible shield, the weapons that bent gravity and disrupted matter, the nanomachines that had killed his fleet without a single shot being fired. He described the ambushes on the surface, the civilians who fought like soldiers, the entire species that had transformed itself into a weapon. Do not send reinforcements, he concluded. Do not attempt rescue. Do not contact Earth. This species does not fight like others. They do not surrender. They do not flee. They do not negotiate from weakness. They prepared for our arrival as if they had seen the future. He hesitated, then added one final piece of information. The coordinates of every military installation in the Empire, extracted from his ship's database by the human nanomachines. The humans had taken everything. They knew where to find every fleet, every base, every colony. They have our secrets, said. All of them. Guard thee, pray to whatever gods still listen. And remember this, we thought we were the hunters, we were wrong. The transmission ended. The console sparked and died, the machines inside it finally completing their work, stood in the darkness, knowing that his message would travel across the light years to reach his people. They would know what had happened. They would know to fear the blue planet and its impossible inhabitants. On Earth, General accepted the formal surrender personally. He stood in the ruins of what had been Seoul, surrounded by the civilians who had defended their home. The sky was with smoke, but sunlight was beginning to break through the clouds. Approached him and performed the gesture of submission, lowering all 4 arms and bowing his head. We surrender unconditionally. Our lives are in your hands. Studied the alien officer for a moment. This creature had participated in the destruction of 17 species. He had helped enslave billions. He had come to Earth expecting to add humanity to the list of the conquered. Your lives are your own, replied. You will be treated fairly, given food, water, medical care. When negotiations with your empire are complete, you will be returned to your people. Looked up with confusion. You will not execute us. You will not torture us for information. You will not use us as examples. No. Why? Thought about the question. He thought about the who had tried to warn humanity before they were exterminated. He thought about the 17 species who had died screaming under weapons. He thought about the choice that stood before humanity now that they had proven themselves capable of destroying anyone who threatened them. Because we are not you, he said simply. Because victory means nothing if we become what we fought against. The prisoners were processed over the following weeks. 3 million warriors and the crews of 12,000 warships were housed in temporary facilities across the planet. They received adequate food, clean water, medical attention. They were not abused, not experimented upon, not treated as anything other than defeated soldiers awaiting repatriation. It confused them more than any weapon could have. Captain oversaw the prisoner coordination, her gentle manner providing comfort to creatures who had expected only cruelty. She spoke with them, learned their names, listened to their stories. Some of them had never known anything but war. Some of them had been born into conquest and knew nothing else. "Why do you treat us kindly?" one young warrior asked her. "We came to enslave your people. We destroyed your cities. We would have shown you no mercy." "Because somewhere in the galaxy," replied, "there are children who do not know that their parents built an empire on bones. They deserve a chance to be better." 1 year after the invasion, Earth sent a message to the stars. It was broadcast on every frequency, aimed at every known civilization, a declaration that would change galactic history forever. Secretary General spoke for humanity. "We are the humans of Earth. For centuries, we believed we were alone in the universe. Then we discovered that we were being hunted. Civilizations rose and fell around us while we were still learning to make fire. Empires conquered and destroyed while we dreamed of reaching the stars." He paused, his elderly face calm and determined. "Now we have reached them, and we bring this message to every species, conquered or free. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. To those who have suffered under the rule of conquerors, we offer hope. To those who prey upon the weak, we offer a warning." His voice grew stronger. "Earth stands ready, not for conquest. We leave that to smaller minds, but for justice, for protection, for the simple idea that no species should face extinction alone. We have defeated one empire. We can defeat others, and we will protect anyone who asks for our help." The transmission ended with coordinates to Sol's system and a simple invitation: "Come find us. We have much to discuss." In the decades that followed, Earth became something unprecedented. A sanctuary for the lost, a nightmare for the cruel, a beacon of hope in a galaxy that had known only predators and prey. Species that had been hunted for generations found protection. Empires that had ruled through fear found that their victims now had a champion. The empire reformed itself after news of the defeat spread through their colonies. The warrior culture that had defined them began to change. Some resisted, but they were few. The lesson of Earth had been too complete, too devastating to ignore. Admiral served as humanity's first ambassador to the galactic community. She stood before assemblies of species that had once feared extinction and spoke of Earth's commitment to peace. She was respected. She was trusted. She had proven that strength could be used for protection rather than domination. Doctor continued her research, developing technologies that would help humanity explore the stars not as conquerors, but as partners. Her quantum field generators became the foundation of a defensive network that protected not just Earth, but any world that asked for help. General trained a new generation of soldiers, warriors who understood that true victory lay not in destruction, but in the courage to protect. His students spread across the galaxy, helping species defend themselves, teaching them that they did not have to face the darkness alone. And in the shelters beneath and returned to ordinary life. The accountant went back to her numbers. Her daughter studied to become a diplomat. They had fought to save their world, and now they could live in the peace they had earned. But they kept their weapons. Everyone did. The galaxy had learned that Earth was not helpless, but humanity had also learned that vigilance never ended. The alien warlords had laughed at Earth's defenses. Their final transmission had warned the galaxy what happened to those who underestimated humanity. And in the vast darkness between the stars, countless species heard that warning and took hope. They were no longer alone. Earth was watching, and Earth remembered.